Making a game is hard. There's so many moments recently where I thought I had everything done. I thought I was ready to publish out this demo that I've been working on for so long, only to find during my last phase of testing a bunch of little things that I forgot, little details that I did not actually get to finish to iron out, that essentially prevent me from launching it because it's an incomplete product. And that's been my life over these past couple of weeks. And I want to share this with you here because on one hand, I did make a lot of progress on my game over here, which I'm very proud of. But on the other hand, there's still so much and so many little things that I still have to get done. Now, if you're new here, well, first of all, welcome. My name is Darius, and I like to build apps and games, usually inspired by RuneScape, and talk about them on this YouTube channel over here. And today, we're talking about my idle RPG, also inspired by RuneScape, Alden Idle. So let me now show you where I'm at with this game and what's been taking up so much of my time, because I haven't talked about this game on this channel in a couple of weeks. So this is the main inventory screen, and on first glance, this looks like a lot of items, right? It certainly does to me, because I spent a lot of time building every single one of these items and drawing them literally pixel by pixel. And I'm very happy with the result. This is now looking like a proper game, right? Like a proper item diversity. There's a bunch of colors here, but this is only enough to really have a playable demo for this game and the scope that I really wanted to have with this game. And that's really my goal. My goal is not to build out the full game, because that would be insane. That would take like over a year to do so, but really to just make enough so that we can have an actual playable demo that is self-contained, that has kind of all of the features and gameplay that I want you as a player to experience, and that also gives us a really good opportunity to be able to get feedback to improve this for the full version 1 launch of this game. So let me now show you what you can do with all of these items. First of all, let's go here to the dungeons, because I did talk about the dungeons in a previous devlog. I'm happy to announce that the dungeons are pretty much feature complete when it comes to a playable demo. So here we have a couple of dungeons. There's actually 6 that are going to launch for this demo here, and they range from level 10 all the way up to level 50, which I'm planning to have this be the level cap for the demo, but more on that later. Dungeons, the way they work is pretty simple. You can click here to view info on a specific dungeon. This part of the UI here isn't yet done. I really hate how this looks. I'm currently working on it. But essentially, dungeons are simply a series of monsters that you fight, and they end with a boss for each dungeon. So in this case, in the sewer depths, we have the Rat King as the boss. Then if you go here to, for example, the Darkwood Forest, we have here an Elder Bear, right? That's the boss. We have all of these drops of the dungeon here. You can see some of these items over here that I painstakingly worked to draw and figure out all of those. And finally, the biggest dungeon inside of this demo that is going to be the Haunted Graveyard at level 50 with Valdris, the Wraith, that is a magic-based monster, a boss that you have to fight and defeat. Now, one of the biggest problems that I currently have with dungeons that I need to figure out, and that's I think going to be figured out when we actually have the playtest, is how do I structure all of the monsters and the balance within the actual dungeon. Because if you look here, this dungeon, right, Haunted Graveyard, is for level 50. This is basically the recommended level that you should be at to defeat the dungeon. Of course, you can be lower level than this if you're really good and have good gear, but generally that's kind of the way that this goes. But if you see here, the monsters inside of the dungeon are not really level 50 monsters. Like you have the zombie here, which is level 19. You have the Wraith, which is level 15. I should probably reorder these to make them go in like in increasing difficulty, but that's fine. And then you have the Ghoul here, which is level 22. Right, so as a level 50 player, you're gonna go through these super easily without breaking a sweat. However, the boss over here is level 62. And that's essentially the challenge of the dungeon. This boss here is way stronger than all of these other mobs over here. These mobs are basically the trash mobs that you just have to get through inside of the dungeon to essentially get to the final boss. And on one hand, I think that this is cool because it kind of fits with the existing kind of ways that dungeons are inside of normal MMORPGs and stuff like that, and just generally RPGs. But on the other hand, it kind of feels like these monsters over here are just essentially trash, right? Which is what they are. And that the dungeon could even work without these monsters even being there. That's the way that it is currently, and I'm not entirely sure if this is the final way that the dungeons features is going to actually look when we actually launch this game. Right, so we're going to have to figure that out. Something else that I was working on is the factions over here, and specifically adding content to the factions. So first of all, I did try to work a little bit on the UI of these factions over here. There's still a lot of work to be done. This is still work in progress. I tried to do something cool here with like a question mark to kind of signify that a quest is ready to be completed, like you would have in like World of Warcraft or pretty much any other MMORPG. And then also I was working on, I just don't have it yet here, on an exclamation mark for like quests that are ready. This all might change. It's all just temporary work in progress UI as I'm figuring out the direction that I want to take this in. But see, this is another example where I thought I was done, right? The factions feature is pretty functional. It works. It does what it's supposed to do, but there's all of these little things that have yet to be figured out. Also, if you click here to view quest over here, I did work a little bit on the UI over here. I put here the header of the NPC. Before it was below the description, now it's a little bit above, and I kind of try to condense things a little bit to make it a little bit cleaner. And for the most part, I'm quite happy with how this UI for the quest actually looks like. Now, one cool thing that I did with quests over here, so the faction quests, is I tied them to existing content in the app. For example, I tied them to the dungeons over here. So this one over here, the Knight's Armament, is the last quest to become an initiate, or actually to get through initiate and become a recruit inside of the Fighters Guild over here. And I have quests for initiate and recruit. That's going to be it for the demo. This last quest over here is going to have you defeat 10 bears, is going to have you also defeat the Elder Bear, which is basically essentially doing that dungeon that has the Elder Bear as a boss. Because I didn't mention it, but all of these dungeons here, all of these boss fights over here for the dungeons, these bosses over here are only going to be found inside of the dungeon, and you will not be able to actually fight them individually inside of the combat screen. It's only specifically a dungeon exclusive, so that's why over here it is actually the requirement to kill this boss, because it's only available in the dungeon. Also, these quests over here will give you rewards, but also unlock specific items that you can actually use. So for example, we have here this Azure plate body, which is something new that I added. And this one over here, if you can see the requirements, it first of all requires you to have a level 30 defense to actually wear, but also to complete the Knight's Armament quest over here, which is this quest, right? So to be able to wear this Azure plate body, you have to do level 30 and you have to complete this quest. This is pretty similar to old school RuneScape, where you have to defeat the Dragon Slayer, I believe, to wear the rune plate body. I got inspired by that and I added that here, and I think that it's really cool because it ties all of this content together really nicely, right? Because to wear this plate body, you have to do this quest, which means that you have to do all of the other quests inside of this chain over here, and it also means that you have to actually go and defeat this dungeon to basically be able to wear that armor, which is really good because that armor is then going to allow you to be stronger, to defeat stronger monsters and progress further along in dungeons, in combat, or in any other skill. So there's a nice sense of progression here. Now, I want to talk about some of the skills, and actually all of the skills, because I've really had to do a lot of work to actually add all of the content to every single skill. And for the most part, every single skill is complete, but there's still some small things that I need to iron out to get this ready for a fully featured demo launch. So woodcutting is thankfully not one of these skills. Woodcutting is super easy. It's just a bunch of logs over here. We finish with U logs at level 40, although I am going to move U logs to level 50 just to have everything to level 50 and add another log here to compensate. Fire making, same exact thing. Instead of logs, you have charcoal, which you make from burning those logs. So it follows the same exact progression. So that's fine. Fishing, I'm happy to say that I have all of the content all done, right? You have fish here, the raw salmon, all the way to level 50. So that's very good. Cooking as well, I get for free because of fishing and because of some of these monsters that also drop some meat over here. But essentially, you can cook things all the way to level 50. So that makes a lot of sense. Mining was difficult because it's not just about the ores that you mine, it's also about what you can then do with those ores, which has implication on the smithing skill, on the combat skill, and virtually any other skill, because you can also smith instruments and tools for other skills, like an axe or a chisel or a knife, for example. So here's where I've landed with all of this. So you have copper and tin ore, right? These are your fundamentals, pretty self-explanatory. You have iron ore, silver ore, which is used for making jewelry and crafting. And then you have azurite ore, you have coal ore, gold ore, verdite ore, and crimsonite ore. I'm very happy about this because I kind of figured out that the way that I want to go about this is to have like a color based ore, right? Azurite is the color blue, verdite color green, and crimsonite color red. And this is essentially giving you a very similar type of progression that you have in old school RuneScape with, for example, mithril, adamant, and then rune, but without copying them, right? Again, I want to get inspired by RuneScape, but I want to take this into my own thing and not just flat out copy an already great game. And with this, I'm very, very happy because it not only gives me the solution to my content, but also gives me the solution to the progression, because it fits nicely with crimsonite being level 50, being the strongest ore that you can mine, being then the strongest metal that you can smith to make the strongest armor and to make the strongest tools to essentially be able to do all of these other skills. Like I can select here a crimson pickaxe. This one gives me plus 50 mining speed, which is a lot. It's the best that is going to be available for the demo. Smithing then, right, you can make bronze bars, iron bars, silver, steel, azurite bars, gold bars, and then verdite and crimsonite. Everything makes perfect sense. There's only one problem with smithing that I've yet to figure out. If I go here to the smithy, where you're actually using a hammer to actually smith some things, the way that I currently have it is you can obviously smith all of these metals over here, which is fine. But within each metal, you also should have some progression in terms of the levels that you need to be able to make the specific item. So for example, in bronze, at level 1, you can make axes, hammers, chisels, and so on. But then at level 9, you can make plate bodies, which I think makes a lot of sense. Now, this is all well and good for bronze and all the way up to even verdant over here. But when I go to crimson, based on all of this logic and trying to be consistent with the rest of the app, level 50 should be the level that you are able to make crimsonite, right? To make crimson hammers and so on. But then to be able to make the plate body, you kind of need to go a bit higher than that, which is currently level 58. So if I want the whole demo to have every skill locked at level 50, I'm not entirely sure what I should do with smithing because I want it to be consistent, but I also don't really see any other logical way to have this progression within the metal while respecting all of the other consistency in this game. So if you have any ideas for this, let me know in the comments down below. I would love to figure this out, but I do have to figure this out for the demo. Something that I thought about is maybe like some skills can go higher than level 50 just because, you know, like it makes sense for the skill itself. And ultimately, like locking everything at level 50 doesn't really matter, right? It's not going to be the end of the world if one skill is like a little bit above, but still, I would love to find a solution where it can be consistent, yet still have this progression within the skill. Scroll making is another one that is super, super interested, and I'm also very happy with how I actually ended up doing it. So the scrolls over here are used for magic, right? So you have your typical air, water, earth, and fire scroll, but then you also have other scrolls, like for example, the spark scroll, which I like. Spark scroll is level 1. It's the essentially equivalent to a mind rune in RuneScape, which is also a very low level. And then you also have here the arcane scroll, level 20, shadow scroll, lunar scroll, and void scroll. This is great because once again, just like the metals over here, I figured out a natural progression without copying old school RuneScape, which I'm very happy about. I love how old school RuneScape did their progression with like mind runes, law runes, nature runes, blood runes, and stuff like that. And I have my own kind of progression, which is very similar, but just using different things, which I'm very, very happy about. These scrolls, like I said, are of course used in magic. So if I go here to magic, that's also something that I actually had to do, which is all of the spells over here for magic, which again, sometimes you forget, but like you have to do all of these spells, and all of these spells have to have icons too, which again, you have to draw every single pixel one at a time. So here you have the air strike, water strike, and so on. Then you have the burst level of spells. And finally, you have the blast level of spells here, which again, I have the same problem. You need level 59 to do fire blast. I'm not sure if I should make magic all the way up to level 59 or level 60. or if I should reduce and condense all of these skills over here to only have them go to level 50. I'm not sure. Let me know in the comments down below if you have an idea. And finally, we have crafting, which is the biggest skill in all of this. Look at here, all of the things that you have to do. I also worked on this skill UI card over here, which I think is really, really cool. You can see all the things you can do with crafting. There's a ton because I had to add all of the content, not just for melee in terms of like plate bodies and stuff like that, but all of the weapons and armor for ranged and also for magic. So if we go here to needle, for example, we can come in here and select magic, and here we can see all the things that we can actually craft for magic, right? So like the wizard skirts, the black wizard skirts. Then we also have the arcane boots, which also use the arcane scrolls over here. So these scrolls have multiple uses. And then you can go all the way up to void robes, which are level 50. And this is the strongest magical gear that you can actually wield inside of this game. And that's actually what I have here on my character, because I was having a magic build to do some content to basically test it. I also had to spend a lot of time figuring out all of these specific offensive and defensive stats in a way that makes sense for the progression, but also for the challenge of the game. And then based off of these stats over here, if I go here to magic and combat, for example, you get, right, some offensive magic and defensive magic and all of these other stats, but then also comparing them with the stats of the monsters themselves, right? Like the giant rat, for example, over here, and how that's going to be, how much HP should it have? What are its skills over here? What should they be? And so on. Also for the bosses, right? The bosses should be difficult, but not too difficult. And it's a lot of things that have to be fine-tuned. Now, I'm very happy with where I am currently with all of this, but I do expect that a lot of things will have to be fine-tuned as we actually have some players playing this game and get some real feedback to see, are things too easy, are things too hard, and whatnot, right? And here, the last thing that I will show you is all of the range stuff as well, which is basically the same as magic, just for range. So you have leather boots, you have hard leather, you have riveted leather, you have rangers, you have spined, and then you have all the way to green dragon hide, which you actually get from making green dragon leather, which is again used from actually getting dragon hide from an actual dragon. And that dragon, just to kind of complete the whole thing, you go here to level 61 to 70. This is the green dragon, and you can see all of the drops here. Although the UI is a little bit broken, ignore that, but one of the drops is green dragon hide over here, which you can then use to actually make green dragon leather to then make into green dragon hide body for ranged. So yeah, that's a lot, as you can see. And I'm sure that if you've ever made a game, or like you've been watching other people make games, you know that there's a lot that goes into it, but this is new for me because this is my first game. So all of these items here, right, although it looks like a lot, it's actually not that much, but I'm very, very happy with where I am at. And I'm very happy that I'm close to actually having a demo ready for you guys to actually play. So if you want to be a part of that demo, of that playtest, consider subscribing to the channel, because it's here that I'm going to post about it and give you a direct link to be able to actually play this and help make this a real good game for its 1.0 version launch at some point in the future. Now, one more thing before I end this video. If you're still watching, then you're probably going to be interested in this. So one of my main goals for this YouTube channel, on top of just talking about the things that I'm building and sharing about them, is I'm really trying to build a community. I want to find people who are just like me, who are interested in games, who are interested in building stuff, who are maybe developers, interested in tech in general, and to just have a community of all of us where we can talk about our interests and just geek out on all of these cool things that we're all building together. And for that, I made a Discord channel. It's called Side Quests, and there's going to be a link in the description down below if you want to join. I'm really hoping that this can become like our little home on the internet to just geek out and talk about all these different things, and also for me to share my progress and things that I'm working on, and for you as well, right? It's completely free to talk about anything that you want. So if you're interested, once again, I'll leave a link to it in the description. I would love to see you on there. It's a brand new Discord, so if you're the first member, don't be shy, come say hi, and let's build this up from there. Cool. So with that, that's it for this devlog. Thank you so much for watching. My name has been Darius Cousin. I will catch you in the next one. And until then, have a good one. Ciao, ciao.